Hi there, I'm Angela Brown and this is Ask a House Cleaner. This is a show where you get to ask a house cleaning question and I get to help you find an answer. Today's question comes from a woman who has moved many times over the years. And she says, every time I move, the mold follows me. What on earth is going on and how do I get rid of the mold? All right, well, mold is a little bit interesting, and once we understand it, then we can figure out how we can get rid of it in our homes. So what you need to know about mold is it's like a yeast or a mushroom, but it's a fungus. It's an organic fungus that grows, and it needs three things in order to grow. It needs oxygen and water and temperatures. So temperatures between 40 to 100 degrees is the best temperature for mold to grow in. Now there are three kinds of mold. There's a black mold, a green mold, and a blue mold. Now, one is an allergenic mold, which just makes you sneeze and cough and your eyes will itch and it causes allergies. The other one is a pathogenic mold, and the pathogenic mold resembles bacterial pneumonia. So it gets inside your lungs and it makes you cough, and it's a little bit worse than just the allergy kind. The kind that you need to be the most scared of is the black mold, and that's the one that causes the most harm to humans. Okay, so what causes mold? Well, mold, because it's organic, it feeds off of organic substances. So like wood and paint and food and fabric and things like that, mold will attach itself to and it will expand. And then it puts off airborne contaminates and little spores that then get into the air and wreak havoc with your health. So we don't want mold in our house. Mold is bad. Now, one of the things that causes mold, like I said, is water. And so if you have water on your windows, there might be some condensation during a rainstorm or when the weather changes. So what you want to do to get rid of that is you want to make sure that you clean your window seals and you clean the window frames around the window so that that doesn't build up as it dries out. Now, whenever there's water in your house and the water starts to dry out, if the temperature is humid, it's going to create those mold spores. So one of the places that we're going to catch the mold, for example, is in our bathroom. If you've ever been taking a shower and you look around the bottom of the shower floor and you see the black grout, that's actually mold. And so what happens is when the water settles, because the bathroom is so humid and it's so hot, what happens then is that mold creates. So you want to make sure that when you're done with your shower that you open the shower door and you leave the shower door open so that it can kind of air out in there. Also, when you're taking a shower, you want to turn on the overhead fan and you want to leave that on for up to 30 minutes after you take your shower. That will help suck some of the air out of the bathroom so that it's not so humid in your bathroom. And then you also want to make sure that you wipe around your sinks when you're done, like if you wash your hands or you brush your teeth and there's water on your vanity, that's going to create mold if it just sits there because it doesn't have time to dry out before all of the fungus sets in. So you want to make sure that you wipe around and you clean out your basin, not to be, super OCD about it, but you want to make sure that that doesn't settle around your sinks and your toilets and your bathtubs and other places in your bathroom that could also catch mold are towels. When you get out of the shower and you have a wet towel, if you bunch your towel up or you just drop it on the floor, because it feeds on fabric, mold will also build up inside your towels. So you want to make sure that you hang those up to dry so that they can dry out the very quickest possible way so that it doesn't create mold. Okay, so another thing that you want to think of is also the bath mat that you step out from the shower onto the bath mat. A lot of times they'll have those rubberized bottoms of the mat so that the mat doesn't slip, but that rubberized part holds the water inside the mat. And so that creates a fungus inside your mat that when you step off it with your clean toes, if you keep walking on that mat before it has a chance to dry, then you get fungus on your toes, and that's sometimes where the toe fungus comes from because you're picking up that mold onto your feet. So you want to make sure that when you're done with your shower that you hang your mats up to dry and that you wash your mats regularly so that there's not a buildup in there. And when you wash your mats, make sure you wash them in really hot water. Okay, so another part of our house that creates mold are our kitchen areas. Because when we cook, there's a lot of humidity in the air. When we boil water, when we make coffee, things like that, it sends off some humidity into the air that is maybe more than our kitchen or our house is able to regulate on its own. So what happens then is mold starts to settle in strange places. So you want to make sure that when you're using your stove or your microwave, that you turn the vent on. and leave the vent on so that that will help suck some of the moisture out of the air. And so also if you have a coffee maker, you want to make sure that you open the lid and that you take the coffee maker apart and you leave it open so that it can air out, so that that bacteria and that mold doesn't grow inside. And the same rules apply to your dishwashing machine. Now the dishwasher, it uses a lot of heat. And because it uses heat and water, it's a perfect place and a perfect breeding ground for mold and mildew. And so you want to make sure when you go to bed at night that you open the dishwasher door and you just leave it open. Let it air out so that the mold and the fungus doesn't build up in there, because that's supposed to be a sanitary place where you wash your dishes. Now, if you have dishes that are just sitting in the sink, because the mold will generate from food, from moisture, from living organisms, right? You don't want your dishes with junk and food on them to be sitting in your sink for long periods of time. One of the options that you have is you can, on a regular normal day, just put a towel on your cupboard, take the dish drainer out of your dishwashing machine and put it on top of your cupboard and just rinse the dishes as you go and let them air dry. That way there's no bacteria that's building up on them, and they can just dry naturally, but very quickly, so that you don't have mold that builds up. Now, when we talk about wet, dark, damp places, I also need to mention your refrigerator. Have you ever seen food inside your refrigerator that has mold on it? And even though it's not the 40 to 100 degrees, every time you open the refrigerator door and you stand there in front of the refrigerator with the door open, it's letting in all this hot air from the regular room temperature air, which is 40 to 100 degrees. And so when that hits your food, it's like a magnet and it attracts that. And because you already have food, which is a living organism, and it's connecting to the hotter temperatures, now you have the perfect breeding ground for mold. And that's why our food molds. So we want to make sure that if you're going to the refrigerator, know what you're going to get. Hurry and get it and close the door again so that you don't have long extended periods of time where you're having hot air come into your refrigerator. Now over to your washing machine. Your washing machine is also a breeding ground for mold. And so because there's a lot of water and there are hot temperatures that are also in your washing machine, when you're done washing a load of laundry, you want to make sure that you leave the door of your washing machine open if it's a front load. And if it's a top load, you want to make sure that you open the top and just leave it open so that everything can kind of air out and it can clear out without creating the mold. So how do you know if your house has too much humidity? Because if you live in a place like I do, which is Charlotte, North Carolina, it's a very humid area. And so if you just open your door, you're going to be blasted by a bunch of heat and a bunch of liquid air. I mean, it's just humid. Okay, so during the summertime, we have what's called a dehumidifier, and I will put links in the show notes so that you can take a look and see what a dehumidifier looks like. You can dehumidify your house during the summertime when there's extra humidity and heat in the air. A perfect place to keep your house is at 30 to 50% humidity, because we need humidity for our bodies. Otherwise, like, our eyes would get stuck because there would be no liquid in our eyes. We wouldn't be able to breathe. We'd have really itchy eyes and nose. So we need humidity in the air, but you can't have too much humidity in the air. So you'll notice that sometimes during the winter time when it's super dry and it's cold, how it sucks all the humidity out of the air and your hands get dried and cracked and chapped. And we feel like we need moisture. It's because there's a lack of moisture. So during the winter time, we use humidifiers. During the summertime, we use dehumidifiers. So how do you know how much humidity is in your air? Well, you can call somebody and have them come over, and a professional will be able to tell you if you have too much or too little humidity. Or you can buy a hygrometer, which is a little tiny gadget. They're about $9. You can buy them on Amazon. I'll put a link to them in the show notes. And you can have it just sitting on your cupboard, and it will regulate and tell you the temperature inside your house along with the humidity so that you know, are you too much or too little, and what is the balance? Because like I said, you want to keep your home between 30 to 50% humidity in order that you don't build the bacteria and the mold and the mildew. So to answer your question, if the mold is following you around, it's a very simple fix. What you do in order to reduce the mold is you simply control the humidity, you control the dust, and you keep air circulating throughout your house. So a simple trick, you might close your bedroom door at night. During the day, keep it open. Keep all of the interior doors of your house open so that the air can circulate properly. And if you have the little vents that are overhead or on the floor, you want to make sure that those are all open so that when you turn your air conditioning on, that it circulates through your entire house and one particular room is not being blocked off because you don't use that room very often. Now, it's tempting to close those vents, but don't do that because then it becomes a haven for mold and other toxic airborne contaminants. Alrighty, so that's my tip for today. I hope this stops the mold from following you around. And until we meet again, leave the world a cleaner place than when you found it.